Hello, my name is Mark, and I thank you so much for coming by today. If you've seen my work before, then you probably know. If you haven't seen my work, then let me just explain that I love drawing in pen and ink. I've been doing it since I was about 4 years old, and I've never stopped. So here you're seeing some examples of work from a challenge called Inktober, which is an online challenge where people from all over the world come together in the month of October, and there's a prompt list, and there's a bunch of different challenges at that time, but I choose to do Inktober. And we get a word prompt, and you have to come up with a solution for that word, and it can be anything. And so these are some of the solutions for the words that came up a few years ago. And I've been doing this challenge pretty much for years now, and it's something that I really, really enjoy. It lets me get back to my roots of drawing in pen and ink. It lets me explore different tools and different options, and I just have a blast. If you want to see more of this kind of illustration work, you can go to my website and see the Inktober drawings. I just have a blast doing it. But if you're just starting out, if you're a new artist and you're not sure where to begin, it can be really overwhelming. There's so many different tools and just different pens on the market, from low end to high end and right in the middle. Where do you start? What do you go for? Well, for me, I can only talk about my past and my roots, and that is when I go back to middle school. I had a middle school art teacher who handed me a bottle of ink and said, "Here, try this." She watched me drawing with ballpoint pens all the time and said, "I think you'll like this." And she gave me a dip pen, and the next thing I knew, I was in love. I loved the feeling and the experience, that tactile experience of dipping a pen in the ink and creating from there. So over the years, I've collected all kinds of pens and nibs and all that stuff, and I have a nice little collection, but I use them all and I respect them all for what they do. These are oblique pens, which are calligraphy pens, and I really love these because they allow me to see over the drawing. Now, these are custom, so they're a little expensive. I don't recommend running out and buying these, but I love drawing with oblique pens. Now, if we go back even further into the 1970s when I was really young, flare markers were the way to go. They were 50-cent little markers. They had a felt ink chamber and they had a felt tip that you could draw all day and you could destroy these things. They came in a range of colors, but these were the way to go. So by the time that I got up to high school and into early college in the 80s, the thing to do was get technical pens. And this was the expensive set of Staedtler Marsmatic, they were called, technical pens, and they had a wire filament that connected to an ink reservoir and the chamber that controls the ink. You would fill that little chamber, the ink would flow up into the tip, and you could draw really, really thin lines because those wires could get really small. And I loved that wire filament. Later, I just kind of got lazy in my life and I said, you know what, I just like drawing with Sharpies. And I will say honestly, I love to draw with Sharpies. It is just such a fun experience and you always know what you're getting. There are downsides to them, but there's also the positives. Later, I discovered Faber-Castell's Pitt pens. They were great for a while for me, and then I discovered Micron pens, and these were even better. I don't know if it's the manufacturing, but these pens just sort of solved all the concerns I had. Later, I decided to try some of the Japanese pens like the Kuretake, which those weren't for me. They're comic book pens, but I just didn't enjoy working with them. Some people love them. I had a client and they required a specific style of drawing, and I needed to get Copic markers. I never used them before, and I absolutely fell in love with them. These I bought about 10 or 15 years ago, and they're still going strong. So I love the Copic brand, and that's when I discovered the Copic Multiliners. This is the disposable set here, the plastic set. They're the inexpensive ones, so at about $25, you can get this nice little range of different size pen tips and a couple of brush pens. So $25 for a set of pens, not too bad. However, these are the Copic Multiliner SPs. These are the higher end. That's sort of like driving a Camry versus an Acura. You're driving a high-end pen here, and the range of pen sizes is great, but they do come at a hefty price. They're $90 to $100 for a set of pens. The body is aluminum, and it has replaceable parts, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So which do you go for? That's what we're going to talk about today. And having seen other videos and watching other people draw, it should be noted that everybody has different styles of drawing and everybody has different ways of looking at things. When I was looking at other people's reviews of Copic Multiliners, I realized that a lot of people draw differently than I do. I pretty much put these pens to the test. I've been using these kind of pens for many, many years, and I'm not easy on them. I use them aggressively, and I draw, I wouldn't say I draw harshly, but I definitely draw with confidence, and I know exactly what I'm doing. This drawing is a good example where I'm not sketching anything out. I know what I want to draw, but I don't need to sketch it out. These pens will allow me to do exactly what I want to do, and I know what's going to happen when I start drawing. And using the plastic one versus the aluminum one, there's a different feel between them, and that's something that I'm not sure was communicated in some of the videos that I saw, was that there really is a different feel for these, especially when you use it to the capacity where I use these. I would use these professionally if I needed to. I use them more for fun nowadays, but these are a go-to pen for me. The aluminum one is definitely a higher end pen, and I feel that in the weight of it. I feel that in the way it draws too. Now, one thing I will recommend is don't put the cap on the back of your pen like this with the Copic Multiliners, because you're likely to pull out the plug that holds the ink chamber in there. I've done it myself, and that's why I recommend it, especially with the more expensive SP version, the aluminum version. If you put the cap on the end and pull it out, you're going to pull out the whole ink chamber. So just be careful and be aware of that. But so in looking at other people's work, there are so many other styles and way people work that whatever works for you is the best way to work. I don't recommend everybody run out and buy the high-end multiliner pens that cost $100. The $25 set is perfectly great. There's also Artist Loft. There's a bunch of knockoffs on Amazon. So any of these pens are going to probably satisfy most people, especially a casual user or a new user. So if you're going to invest $100 in a set of pens, it should only be because you want that luxury feel. And that's what I wanted when I first bought these. Now, the aluminum pens are designed so they have replaceable parts. You can buy replaceable ink cartridges, and you can buy the replaceable tips. So if you wear down your tip, you can replace it. If you run out of ink, you can replace it. I will say I've had these for a long time, and I've never run out of ink with these, and I've never worn down the tips. And that's true for the plastic ones too. With the Micron pens, I used to run out of ink, and I used to wear down the tips very quickly. That's why I kind of gave up on Micron. They're great pens, and I still use them all the time. I even use the pits every now and again too. But what I found was these Copic Multiliners are just manufactured and designed very well. And that is one of the things that I can say about the Copic brand that I've learned over the years, is they design their products really, really well. I've used other products like Artist Loft and all the other things I've mentioned in the past. I've used them all, and they're all fine. They do what they're supposed to do, but Copic just seems to do it better. They have figured it out, and they do it better. Now, with these multiliners, can you get by just using the plastic ones? Absolutely. Those are my go-to travel pens because I can take these on the road and not worry about them. They're great, and they do exactly what I want them to do. But the aluminum version, the SP version, I don't think I would take that on the road with me because they're expensive. They are a luxury item, and I prefer to keep that at home and use that exclusively in my studio, just because they are higher end and I really enjoy them. So I don't want to have anything get lost or stolen, or I've had things lost and stolen in the past. So it's kind of a bummer when you find that something's missing from your art kit or your pens or something. So what can I say more about these pens? I sound like I'm getting paid to promote them. I'm not paid for this, by the way. This is just my own experience that I wanted to share. I've seen other videos, like I said, in reviews of these pens. Some people say that the aluminum SPs are just too expensive and it's not worth the money, especially if you have to replace the ink. But that is the advantage of them, is that you can replace the ink. That you can actually, if it's a money issue, then you're going to end up saving money in the long run. And that's what one person said. You'll save money in the long run with the higher end pens. But, it's up to what you like and what your preference is. I have a bunch of the plastic ones, the disposable ones, and they work great. Like I said, they are my go-to pen to take on the road with me, and especially when I travel. If I didn't have them, I would probably use something else, but they're just so great to use. I really love them. The higher end SP aluminum ones, they're gorgeous. They're beautiful to look at. The weight of them in your hand feels really good. And they are better designed than the plastic, sister of them or brother of them. The plastic ones are great, but the aluminum ones, the tips feel better designed. The body is better designed. The weight of it is a whole different issue. It just feels better. So you're getting a more well-designed product. And like go back to the Toyota versus Acura thing. Toyota owns Acura. It's the high end of Toyota. So if you're going to drive a Camry, you're going to love your car and you're going to have a great time. But if you drive an Acura, well, it's a higher end experience, a more luxury experience. And that's the difference between these two pens. If you want a luxury experience, it's going to cost you a little more. And some people like that. Now you can see here that while these tips are very similar for the brush pens, or the brush aspect of these pens, there's definitely a difference in how they're designed. The housing is obviously a lot better. It's a much better plastic holding that tip in place than the lesser version, the plastic version. So the aluminum version has a stronger tip. You can tell by the manufacturing. It's a more focused tip too, so you can get in closer and see what you're doing better. I don't use brush pens to draw with. I don't like drawing that way. Some people love it. I use brush pens to fill in large areas, and it works just great for me. The plastic version of the Copic marker or the Copic pen the tip tends to bend. Even though these are the same size tips, the tip bends too much for me. It's too kind of, flexible, I guess. Whereas the SP, you can see the amount of ink that comes out of it. It has a tighter feel and I have more control with it. I've used these for a long time, and that's the best way I can say it, is that I have more control with the SP version, the aluminum version. And you can see here I'm just doing some little whiskers on this character here, and you can taper easier when the tip is firmer. If the tip of the pen is loose like the plastic version, it doesn't have that control. And that's what this is all about, is what kind of control you can get. Now, the best control that I can get is with a dip pen, but I can't get that control with a dip pen if I'm doing that brush pen feel, because you just can't get that with a dip pen. So if it's just straight lines or just standard lines, my dip pens have the ultimate control. But I can't take dip pens on the road with me. It's not a transportable thing, and that's a big deal for me. If I were to take dip pens on the road, I would have to take a bottle of ink, a bottle of alcohol to clean them, and the materials to clean them. Now, the thing with these pens is, like I said, the aluminum version has interchangeable parts. There's plenty of videos you can watch on how to change the parts. It's very easy. You pull one thing out and you put the other one in and replace it. I like the idea of having replaceable parts. The plastic ones, though, they don't. And if you're wondering how these are manufactured, it's good to take a look inside of what these pens are made of. So pulling them apart and just taking a look is a good way to get an understanding. Now, they're assembled obviously very differently. The SP aluminum versions are more solid and they're designed for replaceable parts. This plastic version is not, so you have to pull the pieces out to see what they look like. Now, what you'll see here is very similar to a technical pen where you have a filament that goes up into the tip chamber, and inside of this you'll have your ink cartridge. Now, this ink cartridge is literally just, it's kind of like a felt fabric inside of a plastic tube, and it's saturated with ink. And that filament goes into that chamber like this. I didn't want to bend it, so I'm kind of just going to do a little trick of the eye here and go underneath it so you can see. That filament goes into the chamber. The filament itself is a very hard compressed fabric. I don't know if it's felt or what, but you can see here it's a very compact material that goes into, I don't know if that's wax or plastic or what that is, that white stuff in there, but you can't pull that out. It is firm, it is secure. I'm sure if you had a couple of really strong people, you could pull it out, but that filament goes right up to the tip, and it is very, very strong. So you can imagine drawing on a piece of watercolor paper, you're going to wear down that nib over time. And as far as the chamber goes, you can see just how much is saturated into that fabric inside the cartridge there, or the chamber. So there's a lot of ink in there. That's why these things will last a long time. You can pretty much measure how much ink is in there. There's a ton. So the plastic version of this pen holds a lot of ink. It's a very, dependable instrument, and I wouldn't recommend pulling these apart, but just for the sake of looking at it to see what's inside, you can see that these pens are very well thought of. They're the consideration of how they're made. But all these pens, all the pens on the market, including the Micron, the Artist Loft, everybody, they all design the pens pretty much the same way. Copic, however, created the SP version differently. They made it so we can replace the parts if they wear down and if we run out of ink. And like I said, I haven't run out of ink, and it's been a really long time, a year or two maybe, I don't know. But I haven't run out of ink with these pens, and I really, really love them. They still haven't worn down, so I can still draw the same way. And that's what I love about this Copic brand, is it's reliable and it's dependable. So using these, I know that if the time comes when I have to replace them, that's the benefit for me. I got this really gorgeous, wonderful pen, this aluminum pen that feels like a luxury item. And if you're going somewhere and somebody sees you drawing with it, they're like, hey, what are you using for a pen there? You can kind of show off a little bit and say, yeah, I got this elite pen. But only if you can afford it. It's a luxury item and not necessarily something that anybody needs to spend money on. The disposable types, the plastic ones, are just fine. So when it comes down to it, if you look at the illustration, this is done with both of them. I do consider them a higher grade up than the Micron pens or the Pitt or other brands. So which is good for you? Do you want the luxury of an aluminum pen, or do you want the cost savings of the plastic? That's up to you entirely. But if you do decide to try these out, let me know, or if you use them already, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear what your experiences are with Copic Multiliners or another brand that you favor and think, hey, Mark, you should take a look at that. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you're doing great. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, because I'd love to bring you more content like this. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself, and as always, God bless.